Hello and welcome back to Simple Money Podcast, Canada's own personal finance podcast about those issues that are important to you and your family. I'm your host, Matthew Sewick, also known as the Friendly Financial Coach. So over the years, how many times have we heard or even said that, and I quote, "When I was your age, I worked during the summer to pay for my tuition." And of course, this statement is usually followed by a teenager rolling their eyes somewhere. So out of curiosity, I actually did the math to see what the numbers tell us. I compared the number of hours that a student would need to work at minimum wage to pay for an average undergraduate program in Ontario. These results were then compared, going back to historic numbers from 1980. All earnings were adjusted for CPP and EI deductions. Tuition in all cases was below the basic personal amount, and therefore no income taxes would be due, or if they were charged, they would be returned when the individual filed their income taxes. Along the way, I also found some very surprising details of how tuition was treated for taxation. At one point, I was even digging in newspapers from the late 1980s, complete with the hairstyles. One of those surprising details that I found was that tuition used to be fully tax deductible, meaning that your tuition costs would directly reduce your taxable income dollar for dollar. This was the case even if your parents paid for your tuition. This direct deduction meant that students wouldn't have to pay CPP and EI, back then known as UI. This big benefit was eliminated in 1988 and then converted to a tax credit like it is today. So enough with all the boring details, on with the show. So our first stop is 1980. The top selling movie is The Empire Strikes Back, and people are rocking out to popular songs by Blondie and Queen. The top album for the year was the monumental album The Wall by Pink Floyd. Minimum wage was $3 an hour, and tuition was $832 a year for the average undergraduate program. With tuition being fully deductible, this meant that it would only take 277 hours of work to pay for the annual costs of a tuition. By working a full-time, 35-hour-a-week job, this equates to 7.91 weeks, or approximately 2 months. Jumping to 1990, the world is changing. With the grunge scene beginning to blow up, and neon is everyone's favorite color, if it's even considered a color. MC Hammer and Vanilla Ice are also taking the world by storm. At this point, tuition costs $1,680 and minimum wage is $5.40 an hour. Students now need to work just over 318 hours to pay for a year of undergrad, or just over 9 weeks of full-time work. Flash forward to 2000, and we now see that it takes a whopping 641 hours to pay for an undergraduate program. At this point, minimum wage is $6.85, and average tuition is $4,256. It's also important to note that the cost of tuition is now over the CPP basic exemption amount, meaning that students that are working have a slight reduction of pay to cover this cost. So flipping to the present day, or at least to the 2018-2019 school year, where the most recent data has been updated, tuition is now a massive $8,838, and minimum wage is floating at $14 an hour. This means that students now need to work over 663 hours to pay for 1 year of the program, equating to just under 19 weeks of working. This, of course, just covers tuition and not books, accommodations, and other living expenses. So when we look at the big picture of the change over the 30 years, what we see is that current students need to work more than twice the amount of hours at minimum wage to pay for the program than their peers did in 1980 and even 1990. The root cause of this is tuition inflation has been increasing at a much faster pace than minimum wage, 6.41% versus 4.14%. This may seem like a small gap, but it's important to note that this compounds over the nearly 30 years. So that's it for today. Thank you so much for joining our podcast. If you're enjoying the show, please consider supporting us by leaving us a rating or sharing the show with anyone that you think may benefit. Also on our website, we recently released a ratings of the 5 major banks and their student accounts. If you have any questions or any kind of financial issue that you want me to investigate, you can contact me at info@ffcoach.ca, or you can find me on Twitter at @F_F coach. Take care and talk to you soon.